Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
Virginia Tech football hosts Wake Forest for a homecoming matchup on Saturday. Can the Hokies stay hot and win 3 in a row? We'll preview the contest on episode 442 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We're recording on Thursday, October 2nd, from the Tech Solutions studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. If you're watching the show on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Riley Klaus. Today, I'm joined to my left by lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman. Across the way, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. To my right is senior staff writer Andy Bitter. And producing the show behind the scenes, as always, is Mr. Nick Brown. And we also have a special guest, Mike Thompson, who's in studio today to witness this show as well. Well, we are here to preview the matchup between Virginia Tech and Wake Forest that is upcoming. So we want to start with some things that before the contest are important. Were there any takeaways from the press conferences this week, Andy?
What Johnny Garrett is a quote machine. I'll say that, man. That's offensive line, left tackle coming in. These are a couple quotes in there. When you're at rock bottom, you can either keel over and die or you can claw your way back up. I mean, thank you for the lead quote, Johnny Garrett. That was perfect. And then he had another one later. Let's see. I think every guy you see wearing that Virginia Tech uniform is a guy that wants to fight. That's another good one.
Here you go, Andy. There's nothing more dangerous than a guy who has nothing to lose or a group that has nothing to lose.
Yeah, that was great. Just rifling these off one after another. Johnny Garrett is welcome back to the press conference room.
He went to Boston College High School. Yeah. That's that Boston College High School education.
It needed somebody just to come up there and say it in clear words like that. So that was perfect. I mean, that's sort of been the story. This team has won 2 in a row. Yeah, not the toughest competition winning it, but from where they were in an 0-3 start, I think that pretty much tells the tale of how this thing is going. Not really a lot news-wise other than that. You know, we'll get some idea here with the injury report tonight. I think that's an 8 p.m. release for all those things tonight, so maybe a better sense of who's going to be available and who's not. But yeah, it just feels like a more normal week and a team that's maybe settling into this new world order here with the interim coach. Feeling a bit more comfortable with him after a couple games and a tight win last week. And, they're going out there with nothing to lose, it sounds like.
Meanwhile, the Board of Visitors has been very active this week, approving a near $230 million budget increase to the athletics fundraising. But, Chris, they're also not done. It's been an active week for them.
Yeah, they've been constantly working at this for weeks now, actually months if you really think about it. The Whit Babcock original presentation in August had been in the works for a long time before that. I talked to a very good source at Tech, someone on the BOV last night, and I wanted to pass along a little bit of information. Virginia Tech is very close to hiring a general manager. They're in the final process. I can't put a date on that, whether it's going to be next week or the week after, but they're right at the end of the process. No, I didn't hear this part from a source, but I've heard that it's going to be someone from the NFL. We'll see. We can also expect some sort of an announcement on Friday about some of the committee members that we're going to see being appointed soon. I would expect that to hear something about that through channels at some point on Friday, probably Friday morning. We'll see. And the source I spoke to was also extremely confident in Virginia Tech's money situation. They understand that it's going to take a time to ramp up philanthropy and the Hokie Club. That's not a ship that can be turned around overnight, especially after years of neglect. It has to be completely restructured, and they know that. So they're very confident in their bridge funding between now and then. There's plenty of places in a university with a $2.5 billion budget.
$2.5 billion budget.
You're right. So there's plenty of places where money is either hiding or it can be
forgotten.
Or forgotten sometimes, or it can be repurposed. So let's say you're planning to build a dorm and you've already saved the money for the dorm and you've got $10 or $15 million just sitting in an account somewhere. But in some cases, you've got that money, but the architects have not even made the plans for the building yet. So you're years away from building the structure, but you've got that money just sitting there. So that money can then be bridged over to athletics to bridge the gap between, now and when philanthropy really kicks in. And then the money for the dorm can be re-raised later when it's actually ready to be built. That's just one example of, the many examples of at the university level. So
now I gotta admit that sounds a little sketchy to me, but I trust your source that if that's
I
what's
don't know
going
how
on.
it works.
Right.
I mean, I've studied Virginia Tech athletics my whole life. I've never studied how universities work and state laws and things like that. I
don't want to.
I don't either. Not at all. So I'm just passing along that, Virginia Tech, the powers that be, they're very, very confident, it seems to me, in their financial plan going forward and their ability to find the money when they're going to need to have it. Now, of course, they're going to have they're going to have to ramp up philanthropy, and they know that. And in Witt's defense, he's taken criticism about how he structured the athletic department in the Hokie Club, and rightfully so. But Witt, for the better part of a decade, has been begging for Virginia Tech for some of this, and he never had a board of visitors that would listen to him until basically last year.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they feel pretty good about where things are going.
It'll be interesting, the money side to things. I mean, you take money from some other project there, you're going to have to backfill that eventually. So you're going to have to come raise that money to then pay that back at a certain point. I mean, what was the Hokie Club donations last year? It was like 40-some million.
It typically runs about 30 or 35
yeah,
million.
it was higher this year because of a one-time gift, right?
Yes, yeah.
So, I mean, say it's in the $35 million range or something like that. I mean, you're almost asking for, I know it's not going to be solely on the Hokie Club to raise this money, probably university side as well, helping with philanthropy, but it's almost doubling the ask of donations every year. That is a lot. And then what happens after 4 years? Then after that, how are you going to continue to raise that money? So I'm very curious in this whole plan, and they have not really outlined what all this money is for. I mean, you could probably put two and two together when you see Witt's presentation, but I'd like to see it just outlined in black and white. Okay, here's what this money is then going to be invested in and how that is going to create more revenue streams down the line. If it's just to bring in and pay for a whole bunch of stuff right now that's not going to have a payoff in the end, then what's it for, right? So I'm curious to hear more about this. I wish they would roll out more. It sounds like they will in these next couple days. It'd be nice if they could inform the media of that ahead of time so we could, actually cover some of this stuff. That would help their rollout of this, obviously. But it's like, what is it for? How is that going to create more revenue streams down the line? Because, continually asking your donors for 30 million more on top of what you were doing before, that might be a short-term solution and you can get there. But to do that routinely beyond that, it's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the thing, though. We don't know what Virginia Tech is capable of because they've actually never operated with a modern, effective system at like Hokie Club and philanthropy levels. So we know what Virginia Tech was capable of 20 years ago, but we have no idea what they're capable of in modern athletics because they actually haven't really tried.
Right.
At least not to the extent that we feel like they should have or what they're going to start doing now. And, some of these investments, remember, are also one-time expenses. So like Jumbotron, Wi-Fi, things like that. That was part of that presentation. So it's not like you're not going to be spending that money 4 years from now. That's going to be like a one-time upfront thing. So, yeah, it's it's a long process that, quite frankly, should have started last spring. Most likely, it's a little bit late,
or 10 springs ago.
You're right. You're right. It's one of those things. Like, let's see what it looks like on December 1st or thereabouts, and then judge it. You're gonna have little pieces of info that come out between now and then, but the main thing is to like hold back your overall judgment and see what the end product looks like.
And my other curious point that I want to hear on this is, what is the reporting structure within this new athletic department alignment here? And,
we get that question almost more than anything.
Yeah,
because they haven't answered it.
Flow chart.
They haven't said anything. They haven't even said who is hiring this GM at this point. It's like, okay, well, you bring in a GM. Is the head coach responsible to the GM? Is the head coach and the GM responsible to an AD or some other oversight committee? I mean, this is stuff that needs to be answered. And I think, what those direct lines are of communication affects your head coaching pool.
Absolutely.
And who you can get in there. So just some transparency on this whole thing. When you're going to ask your fans and through philanthropy for another $30 million a year, be upfront about some
Right.
of this stuff. Be on top of it here.
Right.
I mean, I know it's been a couple days since they approved this thing, but like you said, this thing has been in the works for a while. They could have had a quicker rollout with this afterwards.
It is the Board of Visitors, specifically probably, Ryan McCarthy and Jay Pearson and maybe a couple others that are hiring the GM.
Yeah.
Like the athletic director is not involved in that. And my understanding is the football coach will report to the GM.
Is there a football mind in this committee that's hiring the GM?
They're consulting with Bruce Arians.
Okay.
So that's part of it.
But he's not part of the committee that's doing it?
Why
not just
he's
make him part of the
consulting
committee?
with the committee?
Again,
Yeah.
this could be cleared up if they could just name who these people are that's hiring this.
But I think that's what Friday's announcement will be partly about. We shall see.
Well, lots of intriguing information about.
Now, wait a minute. I got to jump in here. One more thing I want to say about that. I think you guys will agree that when you look at this externally, the headline is that Virginia Tech's going to add $229 million over 4 years. And that looks good to the external outside world. You got Andrea Edelson tweeting about it. Then you got somebody with a larger following, quote, tweeting her. So that's the message that's getting out to people that are going to look at it very shallow. We're sitting here slicing and dicing it and wondering exactly how it's going to go. But what the country is hearing is another $229 million over 4 years.
That is going to be.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating information to see how it all plays out. When we talk about the present, there's going to be a football game on Saturday between Virginia Tech and Wake Forest, October 4th at 1 p.m. in Blacksburg, Virginia at Lane Stadium. Virginia Tech is currently a touchdown favorite going into the contest. In terms of the history, Virginia Tech has had the advantage 26-13-1 at home. They're 13-4-1. In Blacksburg against Wake Forest, and even since the ACC, they've had some fun contests. The famous 0-0.
The greatest game of all time. It was Virginia Tech and Wake Forest, of course.
I literally sat there in the stadium. I was with Trey Copeland, who used to be president of our company. He lives down there now. And we were literally laughing, just shaking our heads, just like, can't believe this is happening.
It did feel like performance art at a certain point.
Absolutely.
Because they would get to like the 30 and you're like, okay, here's the points. They couldn't possibly screw this up at this point. And then both teams would figure out a way to screw it up, whether it was like an interception or they go backwards and then miss a long field goal. It was something to behold, especially as it got closer and closer to that 0-0 tie at the end. It's like, this is great.
I had a double. So I watched that game downtown, and I had that game on one television. On the television next to it, I had Virginia Tech basketball game on, and I think Tech lost to Radford that day in basketball. It was Buzz's first season. So
probably gave him an hour and a half lecture after the game too.
You're right. It was not a great day for Virginia Tech athletes.
Is that as bad as losing the 2005 ACC championship game and then the next day getting beat by the Sean Dockery shot in basketball?
No, that was worse because
Definitely
both
worse.
those games really meant something.
Yeah, that's right.
So lots of history between the two schools. When we go into this season, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons 2-2 in the first year of the Jake Dickert era. I want to start with this. They just lost an overtime thriller against Georgia Tech that came down to the wire. What did you see in that one? How could that affect the morale for Wake Forest into this one?
Well, they look like a well-coached football team to me. I mean, they went without their starting quarterback for a period in that game because he got knocked out. Then he came back in with a big knee brace on his right knee, and the sideline reporter said he had a heavy tape job under the knee brace. So he's not 100% healthy. If they have him that entire game, they probably win. If the refs don't botch an offsides call.
Let's be honest, they won that game. The refs took it from them at the end and be like, oh, well, you got to play to the end of that whole thing. It's like, okay, but he jumped offsides. He was clearly offsides. Right. ACC officials afterwards are like, yep, we kicked that one. We kicked that call. That was wrong.
Not a great year for the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's great that you acknowledge it after the fact, but it doesn't change the fact that the result changed because of that. So they have a gripe, and maybe they come in with a chip on their shoulder because of that. But they played very well enough to win. Should have won against Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech's are the darling of the ACC right now with how they've been playing.
And their coach, Jake Dickert, as mentioned in his first year there, comes from Washington State, and he had to kind of pick up from where Dave Clawson was there for a while.
I think Wake Forest does a good job of identifying coaches that have done well in difficult situations. They're able to elevate a program with limited resources. And Dickert did that at Washington State. That was an underfunded program in the Pac-12, and then the Pac-12 completely disappeared, right? So, of course, you're he's trying to get out of town. But he did a good job there in a tough situation, and he's in a tough situation at Wake Forest where they're not going to have a monetary advantage over anybody they face in the ACC. So they need a coach who can get the most out of the resources that he's got, and he's shown the ability to do that in the past. So he seems like a good fit for Wake Forest.
And I mean, Dickert at Washington State, he's got Cam Ward for a couple years and then loses him to Miami because NIL, obviously. And then the year after that, in 2024, they went 8-4.
They actually got better.
Went to the Holiday Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, then they then lost to Oklahoma, and I'm sure Dickert looks at that and goes, this is not fun. I don't like losing my best quarterback every single year. So I think this guy, he knows how to coach. I think it will take some time at Wake Forest. I don't know if you go to Wake Forest and it's ever just an instant success. I mean, you saw how long it took Jim Grobe. You saw how long it took Clawson to build that up. But they have a commitment to football down there that is better than you would think. I mean, you look at their facilities; they're top notch. Tech is talking about this entertainment district. Wake is already building that. I think that's already in the process right now. Their stadium has been fantastic. It's like a Bizarro Lane stadium. Yeah. It's got the same design, but it's really nice. They have a really nice indoor facility. They have shown a commitment financially to football that, frankly, Virginia Tech could learn something from in some of these situations. So I think it kind of gets overlooked sometimes, Wake Forest and the ACC. It's like, oh, what are they actually going to do? But it's a solid program. You put the right coach in there and give them enough time, I think they're going to have good results.
Andy, you mentioned the importance of the quarterback position for Wake Forest this season. For the most part, it has been Robbie Ashford. But as you kind of mentioned, Chris, as well, it's notable he's a little banged up perhaps after that game against Georgia Tech.
He's always been a very strong runner and an extremely inconsistent passer. I think basically a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio for his career and about a 52 or 53% passer for his career. So extremely inconsistent passer, very good runner. But how healthy is that right knee after last week? If he can't go, then they'll probably use Deshaun Purdy, who came in for a couple series last week. And Purdy, again, he was a guy who started for Charlotte last year, only a 50% passer, but not nearly as good a runner. So they've got question marks at quarterback no matter how you slice it. Even if he was 100%, he's a big question mark from a passing standpoint. But if he's banged up, can he actually use his strength as a football player this week?
And Ashford is somebody that Virginia Tech should know about. Philip Montgomery coached him when he was at Auburn for a year. And that was a hit or miss year for the Tigers offensively. I don't know if you can put that all on Montgomery. I think Hugh Freeze very much wanted to be in charge of that offense, as he is right now, where he's like, well, this guy calls the plays on first down, this guy calls the plays on second down, then I step in on third down, but I also have control over it. Like, who would want to be an offensive coordinator in that situation? It's a mess. So I don't think you put that all on Montgomery in that year at Auburn, but he does have a familiarity with Ashford and his capabilities. So I wonder how much that can help this Virginia Tech game planning for this game.
Yeah, because he is an experienced quarterback. Prior to going to Wake Forest, was at Auburn, played at South Carolina as well, and even before that was at Oregon, didn't actually play there, but he brings a lot of experience for Wake Forest. But next to him in the backfield is a pretty solid running back in Damon Claiborne, who feels like a heartbeat of the offense.
Damon Claiborne ended up being, I think, a top 5 recruit in the state of Virginia coming out of high school, but Wake Forest offered him and got his commitment before anybody else, before he got that high on the rankings, so to speak. He was kind of like a mid-level prospect, and then people finally caught up to how good he is. Was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Was a good receiver out of the backfield. 2 years ago, he returned a kickoff for a touchdown in Lane Stadium. I remember I was at a wedding during that game, and we're sitting there keeping up with the game on our phone, and Virginia Tech hits a long touchdown, and we're like, all right, the Hokies are going to win. And then just like that, Damon Claiborne 100-yard kickoff return, and we're like, oh man, that stinks. But yeah, he's a good player. 8 yards a carry this year. A good chunk of that was against Western Carolina, but he had a strong game against Georgia Tech last week, over 100 yards. Did leave the game on, I think, the next to last play, like holding his arm. I
think it was on the touchdown he scored in overtime.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't out there for the 2-point conversion when they were trying to win the game.
Right.
At that point. Yeah, you wonder his health. I think he's kind of nicked up. He had a rib injury before the season. So, I mean, this is their meal ticket on offense, and they've given him the ball a lot, and you wonder how much of a toll that's taken on him so far. So, Wake Forest coming into this game, quarterback question marks, injury question marks, running back injury question marks. It's not how you want to be going into a game with questions about your key positions.
You're talking about your top 2 rushers. I mean, Claiborne's number 1, Ashford's number 2. That's 577 rushing yards on the season and 10 rushing touchdowns that are at the very least banged up a little bit heading into this game.
Right, so those are key players in there. Is there any other members of the supporting cast who could help Ashford out in the passing game that catch your eye?
I mean, they're like okay at receiver. Chris Barnes is like a slot guy, 5'7", 168. I think he's about 20 yards per catch this year. He's also returned a kickoff for a touchdown. So they've actually taken Claiborne off kickoff returns this year, even though he returned one against Tech 2 years ago. He returned one against Miami last year for touchdowns. But they've actually taken him off kickoff returns this year because probably to try to protect him a little bit, but also because they feel good about the Barnes kid returning kicks. And he returned one for a touchdown against, I believe, NC State a couple weeks ago. So, Wake's got some returners. They don't really overly scare me with their skill position talent, though. Not that the Virginia Tech hasn't had issues on defense this year, because they certainly have, but overall this is a Wake Forest offense that's been very inconsistent in the passing game. So if you continue to see the improvements from Virginia Tech's defense that we saw last week, I feel like they should have pretty good success this weekend.
Yeah, and when you flip to that, Virginia Tech defense is going to have to play well. It feels like they're at their best when they can apply pressure. Can the defensive line stack up against Wake Forest's offensive line this week?
They've been a pretty good pass blocking offensive line. They're not the most dominant run blocking offensive line in the world, but they've got a good running back behind them that can, make them look better than they are. But I was going through some PFF numbers earlier today, and for an Inside the Numbers article later this week. And Virginia Tech's top 4 graders on defense are defensive linemen, or specifically defensive end position and the defensive tackles. They're all coached by J.C. Price. Those guys have played at an extremely high level. Heisman is actually Virginia Tech's high grader on defense this year. With Kamari Copeland, number 2. Elijah Fall is up there. Emmanuel Hickman's up there. Emmett Laws is up in the top 10. Ben Bell's in the top 10. So, whatever issues Virginia Tech has had defensively this year, it's generally been linebacker play or safety play. The defensive line, even when it looks like they're getting gashed, the bigger issues have been, linebackers' inability to fill and things like that.
So Andy, let me ask you guys a question about Elijah Fall. He's listed at 6'3", 288.
Yeah.
I've got him on the depth chart as defensive end. Has he been a defensive end the whole time?
Tech has
he's that more powerful
Tech
defensive end, less of the edge type.
Yeah, they've got one defensive end that's kind of honestly built more like a defensive tackle. And then their other defensive end is like your Ben Bell, Jason Abbey type that is lined up wider.
Yeah, so it was Jonkum and Fall at that position. Right. Now it's Fall, obviously, with Jonkum out of the program. Right. I forget who's behind him.
Jason Stevens, probably.
Stevens, Arius Nash might be at that spot.
I don't think he got any snaps last week.
Yeah, I think they had a defensive end in mind for him at that spot. I mean, you look at the defensive line has played much better the last couple games, and the run defense has. I mean, -1 yards against Wofford. It's Wofford, so. But still, -1 yards is -1 yards. 59 rushing yards allowed to NC State. NC State had the ACC's leading rusher coming into that game. He had 67. Everybody else had -8 in that game when you factor in the sack yardage. That's a pretty big turnaround from 262 against Vanderbilt, 250 against ODU. There was no resistance whatsoever. So, you ask Montgomery about that, he thinks it's just aggression. They've played a lot more aggressively up front. They've played violently up front with their defensive line, and everybody's kind of running to the ball. That's what you need from this team, because I don't think you look at this team and go, who's the star of this group? Maybe Copeland, maybe? I mean, he's pretty good, but it's not like you have
most likely to earn all ACC honors.
I don't think you have like an all ACC linebacker in this group right now. And certainly you remove Caleb Woodson from the situation. He sat out the last couple games with what sounds like an injury situation. They're just not very clear about that whole thing. But you take him out of the equation, and you got some younger guys coming in. Caleb Spencer getting a lot of run and playing very well. Noah Chambers playing pretty well last game. But there are the question marks there if those guys can do that from week to week. But they have the last couple of weeks, and it's turned out very well for this defense.
What would you say is the biggest common trend between the games versus South Carolina and NC State when the defense performed well that they need to continue into this week?
Dominating the line of scrimmage. That's something they couldn't do didn't do against Vanderbilt, and didn't do against Old Dominion. As time goes by, honestly, Vanderbilt's looking like an offensive juggernaut. They are a well-oiled machine. They've returned all their top players. All their coaches, they knew exactly what they had on offense and knew exactly how to use them.
Didn't cover against Utah State and Bronco last week.
That's
Backdoor
right.
Bronco got me a
that where
point in our
Bronco is?
pick.
Yeah, because they gave up 31 points, right?
They scored in
Yeah.
the last minute for a nice backdoor cover.
Yeah,
Gave me the pick'em victory this week.
And we're going to learn more this weekend because they travel to Alabama, right? Yeah.
That's where game day is.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, so
What did Pavia say? He said if we play our game, it won't even be close.
Oh,
Or it shouldn't be
dude.
close.
I love the confidence, right? Like, you might as well be psychotic about it if you're going to do it. Like, just unabashed, just out there 100%. And
No half measures here.
like, if they go in
Dude
and they
sets
lose
a
to
tone.
Alabama, people are like, oh, in your face, Bobby. It's like, we're Vanderbilt. Come on, man. Like,
Right.
what did you expect from us in this game?
Right.
So he's
House
got a
money,
perfect
buddy.
out in this whole thing if they
Yep.
don't end up backing it up. But he backs it up every game so far.
does.
It's been very impressive.
Is he the Heisman favorite if they win?
If they beat Alabama,
So
you're
Nick-
certainly in the
Nick
I
conversation.
would be hard pressed to not vote for him if they beat Alabama. He's a really good player.
He's up there now.
Well, speaking of Alabama, it is just of note. If you remember the famous impression of Nick Saban about, what was that, 15 years ago, Rob Ezell, he's the offensive coordinator for Wake Forest at
Yeah,
this point.
it's weird.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's weird because he was like a backup quarterback on that team, and it's a pitch perfect.
Oh, so he did it as a
impersonation.
player.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did he get cut immediately afterwards?
No, because they were it's some documentary that they were doing with him, and they interviewed Saban about it. He's like, I hear Ezell does a pretty good one, but he doesn't do it around me too much. And then they cut him to the locker room. He's like, today's practice was awful. It was just like spot on Nick Saban impersonation. So it makes me feel old that he's an offensive coordinator now. That he was a player.
Well, the coordinators are getting young these days. To be
That's
fair.
true. That is true.
So for the for the fans, his name is Rob Ezell, Ezell, and it's all over YouTube. So if you want to watch it, it's there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's a little bit about Wake Forest offense. Before we dive into the defense and what will happen in the game, we have some fascinating numbers about this upcoming matchup and what Virginia Tech has been up to. Will, what did you have for stat time today?
Stat Time with Scott Glesner is sponsored today by Tyrus Homes. You see the cool Tyrus Homes helmet behind me. Scott didn't send me a whole lot. He sent me 6 items. The first 2 are kind of meh, and then he has some really interesting ones. In the last 5 matchups against Wake Forest, Virginia Tech has 24 sacks, and Wake only has 12. So the Hokies are averaging almost 5 sacks a game.
APR had a 4-sack game
He
against
did.
them last year, right?
Sure, 2023. Yeah.
23. Okay. 23.
All in one drive.
Yeah,
right?
basically.
3 of them are on
Yeah,
one
he really
drive.
cranked it up
Yeah.
there when they were up big, and
Yeah.
you could just go after the quarterback every play.
In the last 12 matchups against Wake since 1981, which goes back to my junior year in high school. In the last 12 matchups against Wake, Virginia Tech has won the time of possession battle 10 of those times, which is completely irrelevant to this year's game. And this is an interesting quirk. The Hokies have played Wake 40 times. Only 3 times has Virginia Tech been ranked in those 40 times. All 3 times Virginia Tech was ranked number 19 in the country.
That's strange.
That is odd. And this was an eyebrow raiser. Virginia Tech has scored 3 points in the first quarter in the last 5 games against Wake Forest. 3 points in the first quarter in the last 5 games. So the first question that comes to mind is 3 points in every first quarter or 3 points total? And I looked it up. 3 points total in the last 5 outings against Wake. Now, of course,
That makes more sense. I was like, how many meetings have they had? I know they had a 0-0 first quarter.
Right.
At one
Remember that
point.
one.
well, so I did the research, and I think it goes back to 2011. The one time where Virginia Tech scored those 3 points in the first quarter against Wake was the 2019 game. You guys are always good at remembering games. What do you remember about the 2019 game against Wake?
That was Bud Foster's
Foster's.
last game, right?
Second
was-
last.
That was when they
They
honored
shut
him.
him out.
Yeah.
Was that back-to-back shutouts that he had there?
No, they shut out Pitt 2 weeks later.
Okay.
They honored Bud at the Wake Forest game, but his actual last game was against Pitt.
Okay,
and they shut
that's
out
what it
Georgia
was.
Tech and Pitt back to
Georgia Tech bit.
Right.
That awful Georgia Tech game.
back. And Wake, yeah.
Straight quarter.
I
Wake
remember.
had a very good offense that year, and Bud's defense did a great job in that game. But the time of possession in that game was like 40-20.
Yeah,
I mean, they had a game plan that
Great
was
plan.
perfect for that kind of offense going against them. And I think Wake's receiver got hurt in that game or something
believe
like
you're
that.
right.
But they shut him down pretty well.
I remember a deep ball, really well-designed deep ball. The play design was excellent. And Virginia Tech had Terrius Wheatley running wide open behind the Wake Forest defense. And
There's a name.
And Hooker hit him right in stride, and he dropped it. And that was early in the game. And I think Wake took like a 3-0 lead. And they were winning maybe like part of the way into the second quarter. And then Tech just steamrolled them after that.
Yeah, so so since we're drilling down into it, Wake led that game 10-6 at halftime.
Right.
Virginia Tech ultimately won 36-17. Wake Forest was 7-1 and ranked
They were
22nd and 19th in the country in the two polls. So that was a big win, and that was also the game where Dax Hollyfield got the interception laying on his back.
Oh,
remember that one?
About that? Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next item. Virginia Tech has struggled on third downs against Wake Forest in their last 4 matchups. The best Virginia Tech has done was 31.3% in 2020.
And which was the game they lost.
Yeah.
Yes. And so in their last 4 matchups, the Hokies are 14 of 57 on third down, 24.6%.
Well, can't get much worse than that.
Spoiler
Only
alert,
one way to go.
That is not
from
good.
there.
And I didn't have a chance to look at this history, but Wake, this is so relevant. Wake did not score the first 5 times they played Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech outscored Wake Forest 201-0 in those 5 games.
1908 to 1911.
Something like that. I apologize for not doing the research ahead of time so I could read you those scores in years. But that is Stat Time with Scott Glesner, brought to you by Tyrus Homes.
Well, that is some great stuff right there. We're going to have more about the Demon Deacons defense as well as picks for the game after a message from one of our sponsors at Tech Sideline.
This Tech Sideline video comes to you from the Tech Solutions studio. Tech Solutions, located in Arlington, Virginia, provides specialized CETA engineering and financial advisory services to the Department of Defense and Intelligence community. Based on the philosophy of only hiring the best of the best, we pride ourselves on being customer and mission focused. A Washington Post top workplace winner in 2024 and 2025, we're always looking for talented and motivated individuals to join our team. Visit techsolutionsva.com/careers to learn more. That is techsolutionsva.com/careers.
All right, well, now let's talk about the Wake Forest defense, who's been a top 5 scoring defense in the ACC so far. A little stronger in the passing defense compared to the rushing defense. What sticks out so far as a unit for them?
I'd say their pass efficiency defense. Like if you should look at their pass defense in terms of total yards, it's kind of middle of the pack. But their pass efficiency defense, I want to say, is like top 30 nationally, and they've been very efficient. Last week, Haynes King had something like 50 yards at halftime on, I want to say, like, it was a large number of completions. I forget his exact line there, but it was something like he was barely completing passes like past 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. He got it together in the second half, but overall they've been a pretty efficient defense. You have to take that with a little bit of grain of salt because they played Kennesaw State, who I did not even realize was FBS until I did the research for this game preview. And then they played Western Carolina. So they played an FCS team and kind of like a quasi-FCS team. And that's statistically, that's helped them out a bit. But, I think they've been solid. They're not elite, but they've got some solid guys in there. Nick Anderson at strong safety is a very good player. At the same time, once they've gotten into ACC play, they've given up 34 and 30. So there will be an opportunity to score points. They're not a dominant group at all.
I'm still amazed that Nick Anderson is in college.
Yeah, buddy.
He's got to be 30-something at this point, right?
Didn't he play in that 2014 game?
He played. He played in the 2020 game because he had 3 interceptions against Head and Hooker in that game, and he was walk-on freshman safety. And
I thought that name sounded familiar.
I think he got a scholarship the next week because of it, or something like that.
He's from Northern Virginia.
Now wait a minute, is that pay for play if that happens? 3 interceptions to get a scholarship?
Yes. How dare they say this is pay for play for anything? I'm shocked that he's still on the team, but I guess, COVID year, redshirt in there, or injury somewhere along the line, then this would be his 6th year and still playing.
Multiple Wake Forest degrees, most likely. You can't really go wrong with that.
It's pretty good.
Well, if you look at him, he is a grown man with a beard.
He is.
Any other names that really stick out on the page individually that could make a difference?
Braylon Johnson is their starting free safety, former Virginia Tech player. He had a very good game against Georgia Tech, I thought. Now, they're using him smart, or at least they did against Georgia Tech. They basically played with an 8-man front against Georgia Tech and used him as the deep free safety in the middle of the field. He is a smart, high IQ football player. You put him back there deep, and he can see the whole field. And I think that really helps him out. Now, he's still pretty skinny. Now, he came into Virginia Tech so skinny, you knew he wasn't going to hit peak size until he was a redshirt junior, redshirt senior, something like that. Still only a redshirt sophomore. I remember one of the big highlights of the spring, one of the very few highlights that they released, was Marcellus Hawkins absolutely trucking him in a practice at Virginia Tech, because he's still just not big enough to tackle big running backs.
Does Virginia Tech have any big running backs this year?
I think they might have a certain bully back there, who not only can run over safeties but linebackers. And,
yes.
And so I think Johnson's going to be is a good player in coverage. I think he's going to have a good career at Wake Forest. Like, I think he's going to peak out. He's going to be one of those slower developing guys because of his initial size, but still his size right now, he hasn't quite filled out yet. He could really struggle tackling guys like Terrion Stewart and Marcellus Hawkins in the open field. The key is getting them past the linebacker depth into that second level. And overall, the Wake Forest defense hasn't been great at tackling this year. I think there are 9 ACC teams that have played 4 games this year. And of all those teams, Wake Forest has missed the most tackles with 50, with the next closest being 40. So they're kind of well ahead of the field in missed tackles. And so that's got to be, I'm sure the Wake coaches are stressing that in practice this week, because you turn on the film and see what happened last week to the NC State defense. Those Wake defenders know they've got to roll to Blacksburg with their big boy pants on.
Yeah, I think Karan Prunty was another blast from the past name there. Norcom High, I think it was.
Portsmouth.
So yeah, I mean, he's a long ways back. I remember there was like, is he going to come to Virginia Tech? And he ended up going to Kansas. Then we said, North Carolina A&T?
North Carolina A&T for 3 years.
So now he's resurfaced at Wake Forest. I just remember there was a lot of angst because he had a pretty good year at Kansas his first year there. So I'm not sure exactly the whole recruiting, how that went down there.
And related to Robert Prunty?
That I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Probably.
Interesting.
Maybe.
You walking encyclopedias don't know that one.
Well,
I'm not sure.
I don't think he's like his son or anything, because Prunty was all over the place in coaching. I mean, I played against Robert Prunty's teams like at Gretna when I was in high school, but there might be a relation, but I don't think it's his son.
I am looking it up.
The son of Ronald and Suzette Prunty is
So
his
no.
parents.
No.
Okay.
I covered Robert Prunty when he was at Hargrave.
Oh yeah.
Didn't take kindly to my stories and like called me like a KFC drive-through to like yell at me about a story one time. So
when I was at
it was
Chatham,
pretty fun.
there may or may not have been a camera filming one of our practices before we played Gretna in the
When
parking
Prunty
lot.
was coaching.
Yeah, interesting.
he was
interesting
trying to end a
forward.
really long losing streak at Gretna. So
Yeah, well, he had already ended it.
some
He
slack.
had
Okay,
already ended
all
it.
right.
So-
But he was also prone to hyperbole when he was describing his. Did you say Hargrave? He coached at Hargrave.
yeah,
Right? Every player coming out of Hargrave that went to Virginia Tech was going to be an All-American, according to Prunty.
Right. Yeah.
So let's kind of take the perspective of Virginia Tech's offense. You mentioned, how much of an emphasis will the running game be this week?
From what we saw last week, it should be fairly significant. I mean, if Terrion Stewart is, clearly one of your most important football players, if not your most important football player, and you've got to use him. And, Marcellus Hawkins, even though obviously he should have gotten out of bounds on that one play, he was making guys miss in the open field last year too, or last week as well. So I think you've got to lean on that 1-2 punch this week. And I know they came out pass happy last week, but Wake Forest has a better pass defense than NC State.
They do. Yep.
They do much better actually. Wake Forest started 2 freshman safeties. Wake Forest meanwhile starts Nick Anderson, who's 25 years old.
NC State started 2 freshmen.
NC State started two redshirt freshmen at safety, and now it's just a totally different, just more experience on the back end for Wake Forest. So I think you've got to attack things a little bit differently. They're solid on the interior at defensive tackle. Their linebackers are they're okay, but they're nothing special. So I mean, you've got to always find some form of balance in your offense. But this is one of those weeks where I kind of do put your foot down and run it down their
Well,
throats.
the backs averaged 11.5 yards a carry last week.
Yeah.
Like, I know they had the long run in there that's going to skew that a little bit, but you get Terrion Stewart back. He was nicked up. You get Johnny Garrett back. He's been banged up. You have Remack now playing at left guard, which he's very comfortable with. Maybe they found an alignment there with Garrett, Remack, Altuner, Cunningham, and then Aiden Lynch getting in there at right tackle. He started the last 3 games for them. So, growing pains, you're going to go through that a little bit, but perhaps they found an offensive line alignment that really works. And if you have some running backs behind that, you have Drones as a runner, I think that could be a strength of this offense if they can get that going.
Who are some names that you think at this point in the season could try to get involved and make an impact offensively for Virginia Tech?
Maybe a guy like Keelan Adams should be due back any point now. Of course, we've heard that since the spring.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect him this week. Sounds like he's getting better, getting closer. Right. Wiggins, not the case.
Right.
Montgomery said he's a little bit farther off right now. We'll see. I think even if he comes back, I don't think it comes back and immediately go into a full role in that game. But I'm intrigued by somebody like Cam Selden, who's been coming along, had a touchdown last week. I think they said he's moving from running back last year to receiver this year as a transfer. It's going to take some time to learn the finer points of receiver, but he's coming along. They're finding ways to get him the ball where, the touchdown he scored was just on a quick screen out wide. Where it's like, you're out there, just throw it to you quick, and then he's got the power to get in the end zone. So he's an intriguing guy to me to see how he continues to evolve in this offense, how they continue to use him.
Is there anything notable about Wake Forest special teams that could make an impact on this game?
No, their kicker's not great. He's a freshman, 5 of 8 on the season. All of his makes are within
40 yards.
30 yards.
30 yards.
Yeah. So very accurate from close range, like everybody is.
Kicking extra points.
Right. Yeah. You don't know what he's capable of from longer range. So far, not great. But again, they've also got that wide receiver, Barnes, who's returned a kickoff for a touchdown against NC State, who is very effective. Net punting, I want to say there's something like 110th in the country in net punting. So you've got an opportunity to maybe win the field position battle in the kicking game this week. You just got to force punts.
And when we take a look at the big picture of this game, second ACC matchup for Virginia Tech, it is going to be Wake Forest's first road game of the season. How could that play into this game in terms of the atmosphere for them?
It's hard to say. I mean, they've got a bunch of transfers on their team, so it's hard looking up and down their roster how many of these guys have played in big stadiums like that before. Obviously, the returning players for Wake certainly have. Claiborne has. Ashford has. I would say it would be more difficult. It's Lane Stadium, but Lane Stadium hasn't exactly held the same spark recently. So I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. I think if Virginia Tech goes out and plays how it's capable of playing, then it should win the game, whether that's in Winston-Salem or whether it's in Blacksburg.
Yeah, so yesterday we had an interview with beat writer Connor O'Neill of Wake Forest and said that could, be interesting in terms of it's a large crowd. We'll have to find out.
I believe his exact quote was they don't play well in front of crowds larger than 50,000.
Mm-hmm. That's apparently the word. But meanwhile, for Virginia Tech, how can they try to keep the momentum from last week's game rolling into this one?
Play good defense again. It's amazing the football changes a lot over the years in terms of schemes and things coaches say and how you recruit and the transfer portal and all that. One thing that hasn't changed is if you play good defense, you run the ball, and you don't turn it over, you're probably going to win. And that's exactly what Virginia Tech did last week. And it's still a very, very simple game from that standpoint. And if Virginia Tech can do those same things this weekend, they'll win.
I think it comes down to keeping the same mindset that they've had. As a team with, as Johnny Garrett said, you can either claw your way back or just die. And, they were down there in the hole. When you're 0-3, like it's laid bare. Like this is what you are right now. Your coach just got fired. Team's in disarray a little bit. Hasn't played well all season. How are you going to respond to that? And you get a response from teams that are challenged like that. Okay, you've had a little success. Can you keep that same mindset? And I think. Just a change in mindset can go a long way in terms of aggression, in terms of energy, in terms of running to the ball, all this kind of stuff that you've seen the last couple of weeks. You weren't seeing that during that 65-0 run that Vanderbilt and ODU went on. So Same team, mostly same personnel, different voice at the top of the program. But I think the attitude and energy that the players bring each week is a big thing, and especially in college football, where so much of it rides on emotion and how you're playing from week to week. So can they keep that up? Can they keep that kind of aggression? That's something I'll be interested in watching.
Yeah, along those lines, I thought they played really inspired football last weekend, and you just kind of looked at it and went, is that just what is that? Is that something that's going to happen week after week? You change the guy at the top and the players suddenly look like they're playing harder, and you change some of the players and the players look like they're playing harder and more fired up. And you just wonder, was that just a thing, or is that going to be there every week now?
Well, it's homecoming week for Virginia Tech, and they are looking to be in style. I don't know if you saw it at all, but any reactions to the orange uniforms?
Those are sharp.
I thought they looked
I like
good.
it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the creamsicle Tampa Bay Buccaneers look, which maybe not a team you want to emulate, those awful Tampa Bay Bucs teams in the past. But
I've always enjoyed Tampa Bay's uniforms, even their old school uniforms.
Well, they wore the throwbacks a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
If you're doing orange effect, lean into it, right? I mean, last year they had the all orange with the script helmet. I kind of like the all orange logo and the stripes and everything on it. I think it's a good look.
So I actually put a poll on my Twitter feed. I said, do you like the helmets? We're 511 votes in, and 86% of respondents like the helmets. 8% say no, and 6% say not sure. So,
why don't you run the same poll on Monday if Virginia Tech loses?
Yes, it's all based on wins or losses, and clearly uniforms have a major
huge part
factor
of it,
on how this
particularly
comes out.
orange.
Well, let's talk about whether they will win or not. Who is going to win this game? Let's go through picks, starting with Chris. Who do you have in this contest?
I've got Virginia Tech 27-20. I can actually see Wake scoring less than that, depending on the health of those players. It's so hard to make these picks sometimes before the injury reports come out, and you don't know exactly what's going to happen. Like if that injury report comes out and it comes out that Ashford's out, right? I would change my pick to like 27-10. Because I just think that would give Virginia Tech a huge advantage. But I've got the Hokies winning this one. I think the 7-point line is fair. I think Wake is well coached, and I don't believe that it's going to be a runaway by any stretch. But I think Virginia Tech's better and should win at home.
I'm in the same range, 27-19. I've been awful with picks this year, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm same train of thought as Chris here. I think they're a better team. I think Wake Forest is nicked up at key positions on this. They're going on the road for the first time. Before the season, this is when I pegged as a Virginia Tech victory. Now, a lot's happened since then, but I still feel like they're kind of righted the ship right now, and if they play their best, they should win this game.
I've got Virginia Tech winning 27-17.
We're so different with our
I know.
picks.
27. 27's all around.
Yeah. David Cunningham's got them Virginia Tech 30, Wake Forest 21. Nick, do you need me to read yours, or have you got a working mic?
Nick thinks that Virginia Tech wins 30-17 in this one. Do the fans have any thoughts so far this week?
Yes, we are 300 votes in because we just posted the preview.
Right.
And the fans are 62% are saying the Hokies win by 1-10. Another 26% are saying Hokies win by 11 plus. So that is 88% of fans voting think Virginia Tech is going to win.
How many had the Hokies winning by 2 last week? Close game.
Oh, man.
Give me a second.
Wasn't a
I'll look
lot.
it up.
Well, it couldn't have been a lot.
I think a lot of people were in our thought like they might get blown out. This
It
game.
was 81% of fans picked Virginia Tech to lose that game, if I remember correctly, going off the top of my head.
all right.
So, yeah.
A legitimate nobody believed in us card. Sometimes it's
I know.
like nobody believed in you. Come on, you're
Right.
like the reigning national champions. Like nobody believed in this team last week, and they had a great result.
So, yeah, along those lines, I actually wrote about this in my Monday Thoughts, where this was a combination of Virginia Tech was 10-point underdogs. 81% of the fans thought they were going to lose, and they won. You got to go all the way back to the 2022 Liberty game where those things line up. Virginia Tech was a 9.5-point dog. 79% of fans voting in the polls said that Virginia Tech was going to lose, and they went out and beat Liberty anyway. And I can tell you fans were way more excited about this win over NC State than they were that season-ending win over Liberty, which, by the way, was Brent Pry's only one-score win, right?
Yes.
Against a team that had a head coach with 1 foot out the door.
Right.
I mean, Hugh Freeze was basically talking to Auburn at that point to get the job. So how invested was Liberty in that game?
Yeah.
Not very.
Well, anything special coming up at techsideline.com?
I'm gonna write an Inside the Numbers this week. I've already mostly finished it. I hadn't been doing it because I started on coaching search articles instead, but I'm working in a very short, easy, simple one this week, and along with a normal Q&A.
Yeah, I'm working on a John Love story that should be up Thursday afternoon at some point, and then we'll see. Hopefully, some more clarity on this money situation and what the organization might be.
And I'm paying bills and making sure everybody gets paid.
So Will's job is most important.
That indeed. In terms of the audio video schedule, you can go and check out the NC State Recap podcast. We have a press conference breakdown from earlier in the week. Talking with Teal had another episode. There is a scouting report with Connor O'Neill, a Wake Forest beat writer, to get the inside scoop. We'll have buy or sell for you upcoming as well. And as Chris mentioned, the Friday Q&A as always. Well, thank you so much for watching episode 442 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show if you haven't already. For Chris Coleman, Will Stewart, Andy Bitter, Nick Brown, and shout out Mike Thompson again for being in studio with us today. I'm Riley Klaus saying so long for now.